Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to this month's webinar, C-OPN Updates Towards Accelerating Research. My name is Angelica Assis. I'm the Vice President of Research at Parkinson Canada, and I'm pleased to be with you today to be leading this webinar. Before we begin, I just wanted to go over a few items. I'll start with the land acknowledgement. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. If you want to access closed captioning, simply click on the CC Live Transcript button and then click on Show Subtitle. If you'd like to submit a question for our presenters, be sure to write in the Q&A window. The chat window is there for you to say hello and to talk amongst yourselves. We will have plenty of opportunity at the end of the presentations to ask questions. So feel free to enter them now, and we will get to as many as we can before the end of the webinar. And before we start, I just wanted to share a video message from our President and CEO, Dr. Karen Lee.
Over 100,000 Canadians live with Parkinson's. We have one of the highest rates in the world. My name is Karen Lee. I'm the CEO of Parkinson Canada. My late grandfather lived with Parkinson's disease, and I know very well the importance of family and how they have to come together to support one another, but most importantly, the person living with Parkinson's. That is why I am dedicated and committed to ensuring Parkinson Canada continues to empower those living with Parkinson's. Each year, our programs and services reach over 10,000 people. We are a community. We are here not only for the person living with Parkinson's, but their family, friends, and their care network to ensure we all continue to thrive. Our advocacy efforts are focused on raising the voices of people affected by Parkinson's. Our Parkinson Advisory Council is made up of people affected by Parkinson's from across the country. They bring a diverse background and experience, but most importantly, they provide me and the organization with advice on topics that are important to them and their community. As a scientist, I know the importance of investing in bold and novel ideas that lead to breakthrough discoveries. At the same time, bringing researchers, clinicians, and people living with Parkinson's to collaborate to push the needle in our understanding of Parkinson's disease. We invest in the next generation of researchers and clinicians to ensure that we continuously understand the Parkinson's disease and also the care management of people affected by Parkinson's. When I'm in the community, I want people to know that Parkinson Canada is with them in every step of their journey with Parkinson's disease. People often ask, when is the right time to connect with Parkinson Canada? Is it when they have their first diagnosis? Is it when their symptoms get worse? Or is it when they need more information and resources? The answer is now. Researchers and clinicians are working tirelessly to find a cure. Meanwhile, every single day, 25 more Canadians are diagnosed with Parkinson's. Our goal is to empower people affected by Parkinson's to live well now.
Okay, so with that, I'm pleased to get the webinar started. So since our initial investment in C-OPN, along with Brain Canada in 2020, Parkinson Canada is proud to have watched this network grow and evolve over the years into a valuable hub of information that would tell us more about the cause of Parkinson's, how each person with Parkinson's experiences the disease in a unique way, how Parkinson's progresses, and how it can be treated. With a solid foundation in place, C-OPN holds tremendous potential to transform and accelerate research into the disease and put Canada on the map as a leading research community that can support worldwide advancements and collaboration. So with that, I'm very pleased to announce the first speaker for today's webinar, Dr. Oury Monchi. Dr. Monchi is the Director of the Canadian Open Parkinson Network, or C-OPN. He's also the scientific director of the Centre de Recherche de l'Institut Universitaire de Gériatrie de Montréal and full professor of radiology, radio-oncology, nuclear medicine at the Université de Montréal. Welcome, Dr. Monchi, and I'll pass the mic over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Angelica, and everyone at Parkinson Canada for giving me the opportunity to speak today. So, what does C-OPN stand for? So what is C-OPN? C-OPN stands for the Canadian Open Parkinson Network. It's a Canada-wide research initiative to collect data and samples from people living from Parkinson's disease across the country. It was created to connect researchers, clinicians, and people living with Parkinson's disease to foster collaborations, to accelerate discoveries, and encourage people to participate in research. Ultimately, the main goal of C-OPN is really to support people living well with Parkinson's disease. More than 10 years ago, I was living and working in Montreal, and together with various colleagues in Quebec, such as Edward Fon and Guy Rouleau, I had the idea to create this type of initiative across the province of Quebec. We wanted to help make research happen faster by encouraging people living with Parkinson's disease to get involved with research and make these data and samples available to researchers like myself. I founded the Quebec Parkinson Network in 2013, and eventually I moved to Calgary and started a similar initiative at the University of Calgary under the same model. This was in 2017. We called it the Calgary Parkinson Research Initiative, or CAPRI. However, these networks were only at the provincial or institutional level. We knew that we wanted to go bigger and have something national. So that's why we had the idea to create a network that was Canada-wide. So then, after various discussions and application, we were able to start the Canadian Open Parkinson Network thanks to the funding of Parkinson Canada and Brain Canada. And it was finally launched in June 2020. So what happened is that movement disorder centers affiliated with some of Canada's top universities, shown here, including the QPN and CAPRI, have joined C-OPN to help recruit people living with Parkinson's disease across the country. And I would say that despite the pandemic, which caused some delays in some of our activities, we have been able to successfully expand the network since its launch. We now have 10 sites located across the country, which includes a site at UBC, a site at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, site at the University of Calgary, a site at the University of Toronto, another one in Ottawa, and 4 sites in Quebec, including 2 in Montreal and 2 in Quebec City. So in the past year, we were also able to launch a new site in London, Ontario at Western University. We were really excited to welcome the London community into C-OPN, and we hope to continue to expand to more areas throughout the country, particularly areas that have been underrepresented in research, including remote, rural, and indigenous communities. We are currently in the process of adding a new site at Sherbrooke University in Quebec. This will be our 5th site in the province of Quebec and our 11th C-OPN site in Canada. We're also looking to establish a site in the Atlantic region soon, and more details will follow in the near future. So what does a C-OPN site look like? So let's take as an example the Calgary site. It is led by the movement disorders team of the Hotchkiss Brain Institute, part of the University of Calgary. The site is led by a clinical investigator, Dr. Davide Martino, who is both a researcher and a neurologist. The site is also managed by a C-OPN coordinator, Zainul Haver, who facilitates all activities involved with participant recruitment. So basically, each C-OPN site at different locations throughout Canada looks essentially like this. So then at each of the sites, we have clinical investigators leading the site, and many other researchers and or neurologists across Canada make up the committees and that comprise the organizational structure as shown on the slide. I don't want to get into the detail of the slide, but I'd just like to say that we have spent the last 3 years developing this organizational structure that allow us to support Canadian research in the field of Parkinson's. I do want to point out here, though, the Province Representatives Committee. This committee includes 7 people with lived experience, either having Parkinson's disease themselves, like Laurine Fillo, who we will hear from next, or being a care partner for someone with the disease. Each of these members sits on various other committees throughout the C-OPN organizational structure, giving them a seat at the table for key decisions made by the network. We established this committee to ensure that the focus of C-OPN aligns with people impacted directly by Parkinson's disease. So how does C-OPN work? People living with Parkinson's disease or typical Parkinsonism near one of the C-OPN sites are invited to become a participant. Most of the time, people are recruited directly through their clinic, but we also have people who hear through word of mouth or social media and sign up online through our website. You do not have to be a patient at a particular clinic to join. It is open to anyone. And what's really interesting is that about half of all participants who sign up never participated in research studies previously, which is actually fantastic, as we really strive to continue to encourage people to get involved in research, even if you've never done so before. So next, a C-OPN coordinator like Zainul explained the entire process in becoming a C-OPN participant, so the person is able to agree to the next steps and give what we call informed consent. Once consent has been given, the participant can start to complete a series of questionnaires about themselves, their environment, and their disease. This can be done online at home or with the help of the coordinator. Then the participant comes for one in-person visit with the C-OPN coordinator and completes cognitive testing, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, and some motor and non-motor testing, the MDS-UPDRS or United Parkinson's Disease Rating Scales. Also, at this one in-person visit, the participant can participate in a one-time blood draw. Finally, the participant can agree to be in the C-OPN registry so that they be contacted about research studies recruiting participants in their area via email notifications. Lastly, we conduct a follow-up every 18 months for up to 5 years, which involves a couple of questionnaires that can be completed online or over the phone with the C-OPN coordinator. There is no in-person visit for the follow-up. This follow-up allows us to study the progression of the disease and track any significant changes that may occur over time. So at the end, what we're getting from each participant is data, blood samples, and inclusion in the registry. These 3 components were prioritized as these resources will be crucial to helping researchers better understand the potential causes of Parkinson's disease and the immense variability that exists from person to person. It can also help researchers recruit participants for their studies, making research happen faster with the potential of larger and multi-site studies. All of this information goes into our secure C-OPN databases and biobank. And these resources are then made available to researchers, including scientists, clinicians, trainees, and industry partners. It is important to note that all information provided to C-OPN members is de-identified, meaning removal of any personal information. This protects the security of our participants. So now I'm going to give you some examples of some researchers who are using the data and what they're doing with it. So as an example, we have here Dr. Fang Ba, who is an associate professor in medicine in the Division of Neurology at the University of Alberta. She's also a neurologist. Dr. Ba requested to use C-OPN data. And what she's doing is using the C-OPN data to study how gender, ethnicity, and other factors might influence deep brain stimulation, referral, and implementation, basically access to DBS. This type of research is really important as DBS may be underused in certain patient populations, especially in females and racialized groups. Dr. Fa's research aims to better understand these disparities and to develop educational tools and implement strategies to reduce differences in access to necessary care. We have another example, Dr. Silke Appel-Creswell, who's an associate professor at the University of British Columbia and a movement disorders neurologist at the Pacific Parkinson's Research Center in Vancouver. Dr. Appel-Creswell requested to use the participant registry. And she's using C-OPN to recruit participants for a study looking at the role of the gut microbiome in treating non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, particularly anxiety and depression. Further, her group is also currently working at leveraging the C-OPN infrastructure to study the gut microbiome of people living with Parkinson's across Canada. She hopes to, with the hope of finding an effective biomarker of the disease and even new treatment targets related to the gut. So this type of Canada-wide research would not be possible without C-OPN. So there has been more than 20 projects that have utilized C-OPN data, materials, and or the participant registry for recruitment. This has included, of course, a majority of Canadian projects, but also some international ones. Importantly, we want C-OPN participants to understand the impact of their participation in research and why participating is so important. So we have made it a priority to deliver material back to the participants regularly through social media. We are also looking to implement other strategies to distribute this type of information back to the participant, such as digital newsletter or virtual symposiums like this one. This also includes knowledge translation back to our donors so that they can also appreciate the impact of their contributions to Parkinson Canada and C-OPN. So where are we at? To date, we have recruited over 1,500 participants across Canada. This includes mostly people with Parkinson's disease, but also people with atypical Parkinsonism, as well as people without Parkinson's disease or Parkinsonism, who serves as controls. This means that you can encourage your friends and families to also become participants of C-OPN. Controls allow us to compare how people with Parkinson's may age differently than people without this condition. Our collaborators at the Michael J. Fox Foundation complimented us on the size and diversity of our cohort. We believe we have a rich data set representing the Canadian Parkinson's population, something that is of huge benefit to researchers across the country and even around the world. Very important to C-OPN is collaboration. We want to work together with others, pool resources, and get us closer to finding meaningful tools and treatments for people living with Parkinson's disease everywhere. We have established international collaborations with Precise PD via the NSPARC network funded by the France Parkinson Foundation. The Precise PD cohort will serve as a validation cohort for C-OPEN. This means we can compare how the Canadian population looks against the French one. We have also established extensive collaboration with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, including with the Global Parkinson's Genetic Program, or GP2, to conduct genetic testing on all C-OPEN blood samples. Results from their global initiative have recently become available. Additionally, C-OPEN can be found on the Fox Trial Finder as another means to recruit new participants in the network. C-OPEN has also partnered with the Michael J. Fox Foundation PPMI initiative, or Parkinson's Progression Markers Initiative, a major partnership with great potential for impact. So C-OPEN and PPMI are distinct, but complement each other nicely. PPMI recruits patients at the very early stages of the disease and follows their evolution by deeply phenotyping them. C-OPEN, on the other hand, is recruiting participants much more broadly with less exclusion criteria and a less involved set of questionnaires and in-person tests. In addition, C-OPEN also aims to connect these recruited participants to researchers across the country and even around the world. We have spent the past 3 years establishing this infrastructure, and we are now ready to take C-OPEN to the next level. We have identified 4 areas of focus for the next 5 years and created 4 task forces to deliver actionables from each. So the first one is the Diversity Task Force, which aims to obtain a more representative group of participants of the diverse Canadian population. The second one is the Technology Task Force, to incorporate technological advances into the C-OPEN infrastructure. The third one is the Resiliency Task Force, to better understand the factors that allow someone to cope and adapt in order to live well with Parkinson's disease. And finally, we have the Funding Relations Task Force to secure resources so C-OPEN can continue to expand across the country and reach new heights. Each of these areas of focus were selected because of the impact we believe they will have on the future of Parkinson's disease, and pushing Canada towards finding the right resources and tools to enable everyone impacted to live well with Parkinson's. I encourage you to become a C-OPEN participant as a person with Parkinson's or atypical Parkinsonism, or as a control volunteer. You can sign up on our website, copenrcpo.ca. I also encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And here you'll find a lot of great information about the research studies utilizing C-OPENs, like the ones that I've talked about, coming from Dr. Baz or Dr. Apple Cresswell's, but also many others. And this and so much more can be found across our various social media channels. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for being here today, and particularly Parkinson Canada for the opportunity to be part of today's webinar. I also want to take the time to thank the donors who have made contributions towards Parkinson Canada. This is where part of your donations are going, and without your support, the Parkinson's community, none of this would be possible. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Monchi, for that great overview. It's really exciting to see all the great work that's happening across the network and what the future holds for this initiative. So we appreciate your time in sharing some updates with us. And I just wanted to take a moment to echo Dr. Monchi in that we're very grateful to all the donors, fundraisers, event participants, as well as obviously those participants who are enrolled in the study, who are enrolled in C-OPN. Without any of you, this would not be possible. So on behalf of Parkinson Canada, we want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our entire community. So with that, I wanted to introduce our next speaker, Laurine Fillo. Laurine is a Calgary-based photographer and a graduate of the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. Laurine was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease 20 years ago. And over the past decade, she co-founded Pedal for Parkinson's Research, and with her devoted team, raised over $400,000 for research, as well as hosting many successful Parkinson's research symposiums for the local PD community. In her present role as a provincial representative with the Canadian Open Parkinson Network, she contributes a lived experience perspective and continues her advocacy work. Laurine enjoys travel, dance, being active, playing pool, and learning to paint. She shares her life with husband Dave and their 3 adult sons. Welcome, Laurine.
Thank you, Angelica. Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Monchi, for explaining C-OPN's role in moving Parkinson's disease research forward. I'd like to thank also Parkinson Canada for giving me this opportunity to share my message with all of you today. And a big hello to family and friends who are listening and supporting me as well. I'm honored to describe my involvement in C-OPN as a person living with Parkinson's. When I was preparing my notes for today, I didn't want the talk to seem all about me. And then I came to the realization that it's mostly all about you. Specifically, it all starts with you. Consider this. It is said that you can have the best ideas, the smartest researchers, and an ultimate study design, but without participants, you have nothing. Let's turn that nothing into something by getting involved in Parkinson's research. And as you learn about my involvement, consider your own as well. Now for the part that actually is a bit about me. For me, the date is January 3rd, 2003. The day I received the diagnosis, you have Parkinson's disease. Each of us who has received this diagnosis has a date seared in our memory. Now, more than 20 years on from my diagnosis, I can say that PD was not the end of life, but rather the beginning of a different life that I did not specifically choose. Up to this point, I'd had a career in commercial banking. I had left the workforce to raise our 3 sons, and then I'd returned to higher education in visual arts in order to fine-tune my passion for photography technically. I like to think that photography allows me to view the world through a different lens and allows creativity to creep in when seeking solutions to all that life throws at us. At the time I received my diagnosis, I remember thinking, why me? Why now? What caused this? What is Parkinson's? And most vividly, what could be done to slow or stop its progression? With no known cause or cure, as the saying goes, Parkinson's is here to stay. The early years, I remember, seemed to cruise along with medication controlling symptoms. However, as time went on, roadblocks appeared along the route and made it necessary to seek external support and education. So then, as the video suggested at the beginning, I connected and started volunteering with Parkinson Canada and our local Parkinson's organizations. It just felt right to me. And so began my lifelong role as a Parkinson's advocate. I define an advocate in this situation as a person diagnosed with a condition who works on behalf of others in that group with an aim to influencing decisions within a certain scientific arena. I figured as long as I had some energy and good health, it was my duty to advocate for others with Parkinson's who couldn't be heard. And as someone who navigates the intricacies of Parkinson's on a daily basis, I've come to understand the profound impact that research and advocacy can have on improving lives. Being a co-founder of Pedal for Parkinson's Research, I was involved with fundraising and bringing the local Parkinson's community together for our research symposiums. It reinforced my theory that there must be a reason for my diagnosis. And speaking of our diagnosis, along with the news that you have Parkinson's, you've also been given the privilege to participate in Parkinson's research. It all starts with you. In fact, it was at one of our symposiums that I was introduced and met Dr. Monchi and researchers and coordinators from his lab. It was definitely time to step up to the plate and participate in Parkinson's research. I registered early on with CAPRI, the Calgary Parkinson's Research Initiative, which is now a part of C-OPN. For me, it provided a very tangible way to get some control back into my hands, from which Parkinson's takes away. Over the years, I've participated in 7 or 8 research studies through C-OPN, as well as outside of C-OPN. My experiences with the network have been very positive, with the research coordinators making all of us participants feel at ease as we navigate some sometimes unfamiliar territory. And I'd like to add here, although it may seem intimidating to get involved with Parkinson's research, a study can take as little time as completing an online questionnaire or answering some questions by phone or Zoom. Not every study or trial takes months or years, but some do. And so as C-OPN matured and grew, so did my commitment to the network. And in late 2021, I applied and interviewed for the position of provincial representative. I was thrilled to be accepted for Alberta, in this position for Alberta. And again, it gave me another opportunity to dust off my Parkinson's advocacy hat. In terms of our roles, broadly speaking, as a provincial representative, we serve as advisors. We're a resource to the C-OPN committees to ensure that their goals align and serve us living with Parkinson's. Our lived experience is vital for them, and our voices need to be heard in the decision-making process. This is to enable research to both be relevant and of priority to those of us living with this disease. Our stories, our experiences, our insights are the fuel really that drives the research engine forward. With regard to specific tasks in my role as a provincial rep, I've currently assisted in revamping the C-OPN website, looking at different imagery, etc., sitting on the executive committee. I've assisted in expanding C-OPN's social media presence. And this past May, I was very fortunate to attend a 2-day strategic planning retreat in Montreal, alongside movement disorder specialists, clinicians, researchers, and funders of C-OPN, Parkinson Canada, and Brain Canada. It was great to be included and have a voice at that table. We're all counting on the success of C-OPN, and as stakeholders, the more connected we feel to something, the more we want it to succeed. By establishing itself as a collaborative national network, C-OPN is very well positioned to lead the way towards finding the answers to those tough questions, improving treatments, and possibly finding that elusive final piece of the puzzle. As I think back to the day I received my diagnosis and all those questions that flooded into my mind, I realized that perhaps this diagnosis was bestowed upon me to teach me more about life, resilience, and looking outwards for connections, for opportunities to connect and give back. We can choose not to be defined by our diagnosis and our disease, but rather by our determination to create a world where Parkinson's is better understood, where there are better treatments, and ultimately where a cure can be found. So please take a chance, get involved with C-OPN at whatever level you're able. It all starts with you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Laurine. It really is a pleasure to have you here and to hear how you're involved. And we very much appreciate all the time and your voice that you've committed to this effort. So I very much appreciate hearing your story. And we're actually going to be moving into a Q&A session shortly. And I see there are already some questions being asked in the Q&A. So thank you for those. We also have received a few pre-submitted questions during the registration process. So we'll have plenty of time to cover those as well. And before we jump in, I wanted to invite one more person to share a few words, Dr. Marisa Cressatti. And Dr. Cressatti obtained her PhD in neuroscience from McGill University, where her research focused on Parkinson's disease. She has worked with the Canadian Open Parkinson Network since 2021, currently working as the knowledge translation lead. Dr. Cressatti is also completing her education at the School of Medicine at Queen's University with the goal of becoming a medical doctor. Welcome to our panel, Dr. Cressatti. And maybe to start us off, I'll ask you to describe your journey with Parkinson Canada as well as C-OPN.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. So I started being involved with Parkinson Canada back in 2016. At the time, I was completing my PhD studies at McGill University under the supervision of Dr. Hyman Schipper. And together we were studying Parkinson's disease. We were doing so using an animal model, a mouse model of the disease. And so I was spending a lot of time in the lab, a lot of hours with the mice. And so I was sort of craving that human connection to the disease. And that's really what pushed me to start to volunteer with Parkinson Canada. This was a really fantastic opportunity because I got to participate in a lot of events, like information events and also fundraisers, and really get to interact with people who were directly impacted by the disease that I was studying in the lab. A couple years later, I was really fortunate to become funded by Parkinson Canada as well. I earned a graduate student scholarship for the work that we were conducting in the lab, and also our research had sort of evolved from mice to humans. We sort of started studying the same concepts we were looking at in the animals and applying them to humans with Parkinson's disease. And so that research was also funded by Parkinson Canada. And finally, more recently, I've been connected with Parkinson Canada again, but now through my work through C-OPN. So I started working with C-OPN a couple years ago now. Currently, I'm acting as their knowledge translation lead. And so over the years, it's been really neat to sort of stay connected to not only Parkinson Canada, but also to the Parkinson's community. I think this community has such a strong sense of connection and support and strength. And I think it's something that really makes it so unique. And I feel really grateful to be able to be a part of it. As you mentioned, I'm also currently studying in medical school. And so I really hope in my future as a clinician that I can stay connected with the Parkinson's community, but you know, in a different way, perhaps in the future as well.
Thank you, Marisa. And I guess I'll jump into the first question, really, because it relates to your role. And just about knowledge translation and you being a knowledge translation lead for C-OPN, how important is knowledge translation for studies like C-OPN that involve participants? And how important is knowledge translation for the public at large to understand what's happening with C-OPN and what the outcomes of this work are going to be down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. And actually, this is sort of a role that we created more recently. And it was after we had received feedback from our province representative committee, comprised of people with lived experience. And they had given us the feedback that they've sort of felt as though, you know, as participants of C-OPN, they were participating in these research studies, but then never really heard any follow-up or what the results were, what the impact was really. And so that is really what pushed us to start to prioritize knowledge translation. And so in this role, it definitely includes you know, giving information to people living with Parkinson's disease across Canada, to our C-OPN participants who are participating in these research studies. But it also includes giving information to their friends and family, to the general public at large, and also to researchers, to scientists, clinicians, and trainees. You know, in terms of the participants, I think it's really important that they understand why participating in research is so important and so impactful. Without them, we wouldn't be able to make any significant advances in research. And that goes for any field, but absolutely for Parkinson's. In terms of the researchers, it's really important too that we are able to communicate with them the research and the findings and the knowledge that's coming out of C-OPN studies, so that we can sort of build upon knowledge and work together. You know, Oury mentioned a lot about collaboration, and that's so integral to the C-OPN model, really working together to pool resources and work towards, you know, that elusive cure for Parkinson's.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so moving along, I'd want to welcome some of the speakers, or all the speakers, to participate in this Q&A. And Dr. Monchi, we'll start with you. I will ask, why does it have to be Canada-wide? What is the value and benefit of doing this across the country versus individual efforts within the provinces?
There's multiple reasons. The first one is that within a single site or even within a single province, we may not get all the representations of the different type of people with Parkinson's disease and the different type of symptoms and phenotypes that we're looking for in a given studies. Some studies ask for specific genotypes or for very specific symptoms, and even definitely not a single site, but even the whole province may not have it. You also have a different representation across provinces of, you may have different manifestations linked to the cultural environment. But also more importantly, by having a the national network helped us collaborate much more strongly across the far away different locations and provinces across Canada.
Thank you. Laurine, I'll turn it over to you. You have such a busy schedule with lots going on, and participating in research and being on the advisory committee, that takes a lot of time. And so what motivates you to remain engaged and devoted to devoting that time outside of a very packed schedule?
Well, to be honest, I think in recent years, I've been trying not to have a packed schedule, which is one of my coping strategies. So like I try to manage what I can and not to overschedule. So that would be the first thing. Because if you're too scheduled or too busy, then you really can't, you know, put the time in that you need to. I would say that sort of what motivates me is this fact that I still have Parkinson's and everybody else still does too. So as long as it's around, you know, that certainly is a huge motivator to stay the course and keep participating in research and help our researchers closer to the answers that they're searching for. Yeah, that's what I would say. I think, and just you know, participate. If you join the network, you'll get offers to participate in research, and so you'll be able to choose what resonates with you and what you can handle. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to go on to some of the questions we received in the pre-registration. And I'll turn it, this could be for anyone, but someone asked, there doesn't seem to be any research being done for people like myself, a 66-year-old woman who has been diagnosed since 2017, but may have even had it 5 to 10 years prior. Why is that? And I may be a candidate for DBS, but when? Can C-OPN help in understanding some of these questions further?
I'll start giving some of the answers. So, while I'm not a clinician, I'd like to say that there's usually a certain gap between the first symptoms that appear in Parkinson's disease and when they're actually, and the first time you actually go to a clinician and complain about them. So this puts a delay between the start of the disease, or at least the very first time the symptoms may have appeared, and when it's diagnosed. So while I don't know the situation of the person who wrote that email, I strongly suspect that this is in part what her or his clinician may have been referring to, in that the disease clearly has, I would nearly like to say that for nearly every single person with Parkinson's disease, it's likely that the disease has started earlier than the diagnosis. For some, possibly it might have taken longer to give the diagnosis than for others for different reasons, but I would say it's often the case. Now, for the second part of the question, the answer is globally no, but not totally. Let me rephrase that. So let me first talk about the second part of it. The answer was access to DBS and when DBS will be given and how could they have access. So the reason that it's not, so this is taken care by the health agencies of each of the provinces. And we're just dealing with research here. So it's not really concerning C-OPN. Having said that, there may be, I'm not saying there's not one necessarily going on now, but there are sometimes some research protocols linked to surgeries, DBS included, that may become a research in which you indirectly get clinical care. And that maybe someday could happen via C-OPN, but there's none right now. Having said that, the answer is mostly no, because we do not deal with health, with clinical services. We just deal with research.
Thank you for clarifying that. But Dr. Monchi, but there is information collected on whether the participants have had DBS. I think one can research linkages. Yeah, so there might be.
So we might do researches on the effect of DBS, on who has access to it, and things so on. But I think the question was, when will I get it? That has a lot to do with clinical care, more than not really with research, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. We also received another question, similar but more a different age group, but maybe Marisa, you can help us understand, how do we target people with young onset Parkinson's? Are they also eligible to join C-OPN? Is there a targeted approach to reach out to this group so that they're represented in C-OPN as well? How can we onboard people with young onset Parkinson's?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, they are absolutely welcome to become participants of C-OPN. We leave that door open for anyone with the Parkinsonism or under the Parkinsonism umbrella. And in terms of, finding supports for them, I think it's really important to include people with young onset Parkinson's at the table, because it is a very different experience than someone who has been diagnosed later in life. And so a couple of our members on our province representatives committee do represent the young onset Parkinson's group. So we're really happy to include their voices. And at times that can mean including their voices when discussing research protocols and how to conduct research, so they can have an impact there. And just in general, I want to thank you for the question, just because this is great feedback to receive, just in terms of sort of directing researchers towards what's important for people living with Parkinson's. I think we can definitely use these types of feedback so that we can guide research forward and maybe instill more researchers to study young onset Parkinson's disease in that.
And I would say, just from I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's as well, like 20 years ago. I guess I'm old onset. Well, I don't know what I am, where I fit into this spectrum, but it generally progresses somewhat slower. Not all the time, but often. So you may have many more years ahead of you to contribute to research and to maybe even longitudinal studies that you could be involved in that would study you over a longer period of time in order to. That's how you could participate for sure.
Great, thank you. Laurine, maybe I'll stick with you for this next one, but what are the most critical ways we can continue to include patient voice in projects like C-OPN? Where do you see the most value, and really what are the best ways to integrate people with lived experience throughout the duration of a project like C-OPN?
Well, first of all, it's fabulous to be invited to the table and to be part of the party, you know, the research party, in order to, because without that, the provincial representatives, they are missing a piece of the pie, if you will, because I think so much can come. Researchers can learn so much from lived experience. So I think my experience so far is that the sky's the limit in terms of how much you'd like to participate and give of your time to C-OPN. What I found that initially I wasn't sure, because it was a new concept and a new role for not only myself but also a new a venture for the network. I wasn't sure at first what my role was and where I was supposed to fit in, but as time has gone by, as you get to know the organization, you can see where you fit in. And as Oury was talking about the task force that came out of the strategic planning, I'm set to get involved in the technology task force, and I'm not sure what that involves yet. So it's early days, but you know, hopefully I can lend my voice to that. Yeah.
Thank you. So just looking at the chat, and we have about 10 minutes here, so we have plenty of time to go through some questions in the chat. And thank you to those who have submitted in the Q&A. So there are two related questions here, and they are, if there is no C-OPN Center in my province, which is Manitoba, how could I become part of the process? So if you're not close to an established site, and is there plans to establish C-OPN site in Atlantic? So similar in terms of next sites.
Yeah, great questions. Absolutely, we want to expand C-OPN as much as possible. You know, we're sort of just expanding as we can. It's all dependent on funding and resources, but as we continue to get more of these resources and continue to grow, ideally, we do hope to be able to access more cities across Canada, and also more rural, remote, Indigenous communities as well. So to answer the first part of the question, if you're currently living in a city where there is no C-OPN site, ideally, we want to be able to include people at that in-person visit. So it's possible that you may be visiting one of the cities that C-OPN is established in already, and you may be able to complete your in-person site or your in-person visit in that way. We've had some people do this. We're also starting to look at new models for C-OPN that would allow us to include participants in areas that don't have a C-OPN site, but they can participate remotely. So we're looking at potentially doing a lot of that recruitment online, filling out those questionnaires online. There's even some research done on doing some of the tests that we do in a more virtual capacity. And in terms of getting that biological samples, so right now we're collecting blood samples, we might be able to do something that is a little bit easier for people to do from their very own home. So they could, for example, take a swab of the inside of their cheek and send that to us, and we could get a DNA sample from that. So we're starting to explore those models because we do want to create a cohort that is as inclusive as possible. And so that's really what we're working towards now. So I hope that we'll be able to share that type of news with everyone in the future as well.
Thank you. And I am pleased to share, we received a very kind donation, very generous donation from Sheila Bannon. I'm not sure if she's on this webinar, but we want to acknowledge you, Sheila, and thank you for a generous donation in honor of her sister, Jane Bannon from Nova Scotia, who's living with Parkinson's in her memory. And so that will be focusing on building a potential site in the Atlantic region. So we're really excited and are focused on that piece as well. And we'll be able to share more information shortly. So just in terms of the Atlantic piece. So I will move along, and we do have a question here from the Q&A. What do you mean by recruiting participants? Do you mean accessing data that's already collected and available in C-OPN, or do you mean connecting the participants with researchers?
I'll take this question. So we by recruiting participants, we do not mean accessing data already collected and available on the C-OPN. That's one thing we do, but that's not what we mean. I'll go back to how we used to do things. So I'm still a researcher. I have studies that may or may not be interventional or so on. And when I have a study in the old days, I used to go to one or two colleagues, neurologists, and tell them about my studies. And if they were interested, they would collaborate with me and help me recruit via their clinics. However, in Montreal in particular, there were so many people like me doing that the neurologists couldn't take it anymore because there were too many people soliciting them. So now with C-OPN, it's done in a very different way, because if you agree to be part of the registry, the major coordinator is allowed to send you an email telling you about Oury Monchi study, and you can say whether or not you would like to participate. And if you would like to participate, then we can put you in contact with the researcher and directly, without having to go for a neurologist and in a clinic, and you can participate in that study. You will have to go through the consent process that we were talking about earlier today, and we'll see whether you're eligible for the study, and you will decide whether it's something you would like to do or not.
That's great. So another amazing benefit of being a participant. There was a question about controls. How many are you aiming to recruit? How important are controls to the network? Do they have to take their blood as well? Do they do the same follow-ups after 18 months? What exactly happens with the control group?
So they do pretty much all the same. Some, except maybe some tests that are very specific to the motor symptoms. And as far as I know, we do not do follow-ups with the controls. Marisa, am I correct?
I think so. I think so. We essentially treat them the same as we would a participant with Parkinson's or atypical Parkinsonism, with the exception, as what Oury said, some of the tests are very specific to motor symptoms, so we wouldn't necessarily do that. But yeah, otherwise, we're very eager to get controls into the study. I think we were originally aiming for 100 controls per year, and we just recently started recruiting controls, and I think we're already nearly at 100. But I think our plan is to just continue to recruit because it is such a vital part of the research process. So we're really excited that people want to be involved.
Great. Laurine, question for you in terms of the role of technology, looking at the way life is now and doing these things all virtual meetings and, all of us wearing smartphones and using our smartphones, what is the role you think technology will play in C-OPN to really help it move along, to expand recruitment, screening? Where do you see technology helping for C-OPN?
Yeah, I think we alluded to it earlier, and I think you mentioned it, expanding the cohort for sure. Because right now, if the only way you can get accepted as a participant is through the site, and you have to be in that area, then there's a whole area where there's remote, people remote that are living with Parkinson's in remote areas, people in rural areas, and like the person in Manitoba that can't connect with it yet. So hopefully that would be one of the huge gains, I think, that if C-OPN it takes advancing technology into the next level there. And as I think Oury mentioned it at some point, is that there can be assessments done online as well, or virtually, so that you don't have to be in the office with the researcher, the clinician. And I think that would be huge too for the audience that doesn't live in a big city. We don't realize how fortunate we are when we have all the movement disorder specialists right where we live. So many people don't have that. And that's where the technology can bridge things.
Wonderful. So I see oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that's definitely the case. And I think there's 3 ways in which technology can help in the context of C-OPEN. One is, as Laurine said, in the remote assessment and the follow-up and prediction of patients, the follow-up. One is in actual technology can be part of therapies now. They can be therapeutical technologies that can help. So we can do trials with involving technologies. And also another one that is all the aspects of analyzing data using artificial intelligence, because we will generate so much data that these types of models will be useful. So these are the 3 ways I think technology can help, at least.
Thank you. Well, I see we're at the top of the hour. We could talk C-OPEN all day. I know I can. It's really exciting for us here at Parkinson Canada, but maybe I'll just, each of you, if you want to share some final thoughts about, where you see the future of C-OPEN and what your hope is in this next step for the initiative.
I had a quick question. Were you going to play the video that Marisa put together?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Oh.
Let's do that. Apologies. Yeah. Marisa,
no,
did you want to go? I think we should. Why don't we start that question and maybe show the video then?
The video might, I think it might answer some of those questions.
I think so.
Okay, let's do that.
See C-OPEN grow. So I will share that and thank you once again for having us and for everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
When it comes to finding a cure for Parkinson's disease and Parkinsonism,
we as people with lived experience
may hold the key.
Even with the best research equipment, study design, and analysis, you have nothing if you do not have participants.
I knew I had to get involved to make research happen.
This is where the Canadian Open Parkinson Network comes in.
The Canadian Open Parkinson's Network, or as we call it, C-OPEN, is a Canada-wide research network that bridges people, data, and resources to accelerate discoveries in the world of Parkinson's. I became a participant of C-OPEN as a way to make meaningful contributions to research and improving quality of life.
It is a national network that works as follows. People living with Parkinson's, like you and I, register and provide information about our lifestyle, living and work environments, and family history. Information about our disease duration, symptoms, and other relevant medical history is also recorded. This information is collected online, over the phone, or in person with a research coordinator.
In addition, you can complete an in-person visit with the coordinator that will include cognitive testing, an analysis of motor and non-motor symptoms, as well as an optional blood draw. By participating, you can also choose to sign up to receive email communications from C-OPEN to learn about future research studies recruiting people with Parkinson's in your area.
C-OPEN also shares our information and blood samples that have been de-identified, meaning removing all personal information, with scientists and clinicians across Canada and around the world.
Ultimately, the goal is to make Parkinson's research happen faster to improve the lives of those living with it.
Over 1,000 people living with Parkinson's across the country have already signed up. Cutting-edge research is now underway. From recruiting participants for clinical trials to participating in an online study from across the globe, together with C-OPEN, we can make a difference in the world of Parkinson's disease.
C-OPEN is currently recruiting participants from 8 cities across Canada, including Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, London, Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City. Please join me.
Please join me.
Please join me.
Please join me.
Please join me and become a C-OPEN participant by visiting our website today.
Okay, so with that, I just want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending where you're tuning in from, to participate in the webinar, for submitting your questions, and a very special thank you to Dr. Monchi, Dr. Cressatti, and Laurine Fillo. Today's webinar attendees will receive a follow-up email with a link of the recording of the webinar, and as well as resources and links that were mentioned today. And we also want to invite you to join us for the next webinar, Find Your Fit, Parkinson's Health and Wellness Partners Mini Expo. That will take place Wednesday, September 20th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. During this special interactive event, you'll learn about some fantastic Parkinson's wellness programs, and even get to try a couple of them out. Watch your email inbox for more details and a registration link. And on behalf of all of us at Parkinson Canada, I'd like to thank you for joining us and hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.